Anyway, I guess we'll get started. At least get your presentation going here. We over the next 3 meetings, what my intent is to hit 3 different enterprise activities to kind of get us up to speed. Each one has some major projects that we as the assembly, Forrest and I, are going to have to deal with, and so they're going to come up before us.
Solid that or school district sense, right? Yeah.
Anyway, now that you guys are here, we can just go around and get everybody to introduce themselves.
We're not late.
I'm late. The assembly members.
I'm early.
It's at least a minute
City
after.
manager's late.
You can start. Who are you?
Eric Croft.
Okay, Tim Steele.
Forrest Dunbar.
Mark Stafford.
Mike Adams.
Rose Bowling.
Glenn Hosel.
Susanna Halbach.
Okay, good. Well, welcome all.
On the phone.
And we have Amy Dabowski on the phone.
Okay.
What I said earlier, or what I was starting to say, was that the intent is for the next 3 meetings that we're going to highlight a different enterprise activity in terms of projects that they've got coming up. All of them have major projects, and actually there's some of them are, some things are on the agenda for our next assembly meeting, but I've got concerns, and Mike's expressed a desire to run past us and have some discussion of the projects, the anticipated financing mechanisms, and just at least give us a heads up as to what's coming down the pike, and maybe discuss it a little bit. So, Mike, you have anything to say before we get going? And
No, maybe as we finish on solid waste, maybe I can give the committee a brief update on what to expect in the next couple of months, as you suggested.
yeah, good.
Other than that, no, I'm hoping that you guys get as much out of this presentation on solid waste as the mayor and I have.
I'm looking forward to it. The topic is basically he's got here strategic plans, update projects, but the one of the discussion is the leachate issue in terms of what we need to do with it, plans, potential, so on and so forth. Go forth, do good.
Okay, so I wanted to start because I like to torture lightly the people that work for me. But Glenn Hosel is our new disposal superintendent, so Glenn is responsible for,
The leachate.
yes, he is actually for the hauling of it, as well as, the Anchorage Regional Landfill, Central Transfer Station. He let me know that he spent 33 plus years under the radar without having people know his name, but he's a very important piece to the organization. He's been with us, been with the municipality a long, long time, knows the department in and out, and I'm just happy to have him report. He started the job in June of this year.
Oh.
And he's our disposal superintendent, so he basically runs like 2/3 of the department.
If I can interject with a question that may clarify things too, in terms of disposal, have you just opened a new cell, or are you opening a new cell fairly soon?
No, we're
for
still,
landfill?
Glenn can explain that better,
Okay.
but we moved to a new portion of the landfill.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's an existing cell, so it's not like we've constructed a new cell and we're working in that,
Okay.
we're just going to a different part of the landfill to start filling operations. And then Susanna Caldwell, who's our new recycling coordinator,
Oh, okay.
and she.
I do it religiously.
Awesome. She started on September 11th, and so she took Travis Smith's place, and since recycling is such a big part of, the goals of the department and municipality, as well as the main goal of extending the life of Anchorage Regional Landfill, she's got an important role here at with the department too as well. So I wanted to introduce them and welcome them aboard. And you
I
guys
need
can
to
put
talk
a
to you about glass.
Okay. Okay. So just to get started, and if any of this is old news, we can just plow right through it. If you want to just talk about capital projects, you can let me know. But basically, we're an enterprise fund, 2 separate utilities, disposal utility, and of course we have a collections utility. We're not tax funded, user fees only. We have three main facilities. One is the Anchorage Regional Landfill, the other is the Central Transfer Station, and then we have a small transfer station in Girdwood. 2017, we have 110 total positions, 97 of those are full-time employees, and the rest are all seasonal. Our budget in 2017 was approximately $35 million, with, again, about 2/3 of that being on the disposal side, 1/3 of that on the collection side. Typical incoming annual solid waste that we're processing is in excess of 300,000 tons per year. And I think I might have said this before last year, but it was really surprising to me, when you think about it, we're not just a landfill company. In reality, we're a trucking company. And so we're picking up solid waste and recycling from residences, and then we're hauling the waste from the transfer station and taking it out to the Anchorage Regional Landfill. So the majority of our employees are involved in some kind of trucking operation. And our commodity is garbage. And my chief engineer has assured me that this is close to scale, about the amount of solid waste that we're receiving every year.
A lot
So
of
I-
garbage, a lot of garbage. Yeah.
A lot of garbage, and it never stops.
Think of it as 1,000 tons of garbage a day
Yeah.
that the landfill is open. It's open roughly 300 days a year, and so just think of 1,000 tons of garbage a year, or a day that they're open. Every day is except Sundays.
Yep.
Okay.
And pretty much every major holiday except for 2. So, again, and ARL, it's a 275 acre landfill. We've got life through 2050 at this point, of course. The more we divert, the more we recycle, the longer that life is gonna be extended. But like Mike was saying, we get about 1,200 tons per day on average, at the landfill. And since we're gonna talk about leachate a little bit later on during the presentation, currently we're hauling 25 million gallons of leachate a year, which represents about 4,500 tanker loads round trip that are going from the landfill to the turbine dump station every year. And that averages like 15 to 20 a day, Glenn. So we've got a lot of trucks on the road that are hauling leachate. In disposal, we basically have 2 things to sell. One is airspace. And so what that is basically the better that we can place trash, the better that we can compact the trash at the Anchorage Regional Landfill, the more airspace we're gonna have to sell, which is gonna generate more revenue and obviously extend the life of the landfill. And then the other commodity that we have at disposal is the methane gas that we collect and sell to Doane Utilities, who ultimately sells it to Fort Richardson right now. And we do about $1.8 million a year in gas sales.
What do you mean by selling airspace?
Yeah, so there's a volume of space that the landfill has available. And so the more compact and the more dense that we can get that material
It just extends the life of the land.
into the landfill and in-place density will extend the life of the landfill.
Do you want questions as we go along?
Yeah,
Or-
no, that's.
Landfill, just think of it. as
Mr. Dunbar.
There's a finite footprint, couple hundred acres, and then you have the vertical space above that. So how much trash can you put into that cubic space? And knowing that you have to put daily cover on top of it, every day we put a little bit of gravel on top of the trash. So how much trash can you put in there? And the more you can put in there, the longer the landfill lasts.
Do you have elevation restrictions by the Air Force?
There's an ultimate elevation that we're permitted to build the landfill to.
Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly on that previous slide, you talked about hauling 15 to 20 trucks of leachate. Are you talking about to the point in Turpin?
Yes.
Where you drop it into the, okay.
Correct.
Just making sure. And that's as far as you go, right? Basically go into East Anchorage, drop it, go back to landfill?
Yep.
Yep. Drive down, you get on at Highland Road, you drive west on the Glen, you go to the Boniface exit, you come over the exit, come back in town, you get off at Turpin, and you get back.
You don't
on the
use
dump,
the
and then
new
you get back
overpasses?
on the highway headed east.
Don't use the new overpasses at Mulldale?
I don't think, not yet.
Not yet.
And then there's a couple pictures of the landfill gas to energy plant. The generation capacity there is 7 megawatts, and we're currently working with them to try to expand that capacity so that they can utilize more of our, the landfill gas that we're producing. But currently they use, when all of their engines are up and running, 80% of the gas that we're collecting.
So you flare 20%.
And so we flare, which equates to like so there's 2,500 cubic feet per minute that we're collecting off the gas field, and 2,000 of that goes to Doyon, and the other 500.
It's nice and warm around the landfill, huh?
What's that?
It's nice and warm along
Yeah.
that landfill.
But what I wanted to throw in there is that we're currently working with them to try to get them to expand the capacity of their generation system, so that way they can use the additional landfill gas, or that additional capacity that we have there to sell.
Is that a hard sell?
Anything with the military, because it also has to have buy-in from the federal government,
I gotcha.
tends to take a long time.
Is there any other customer they could realistically sell to?
I am not sure of how that was negotiated initially. I don't think there is one that's readily available other than Elmendorf. Because the two bases currently right now aren't interconnected, and Mike might know a little bit about how the negotiations between, because it's with ML&PD.
They can't sell it into our grid, basically?
Excuse me?
They can't sell it into our grid?
They can. They have plenty of customers. They have, Doyon Utility has plenty of customers. They can sell all the electricity they want to J-Bear. Their problem is they don't make as much electricity as they could. And that's what we want them to do.
Sure.
They've installed 5, I'll call them small gensets. It looks like they're gonna commit to install a 6th larger genset, and that will be great. That will increase the capacity of the plant by about 20–25%, and hopefully the demand for gas.
They used to have a standby generator there. Do you still have one? Or
Well,
do
they're
they
all
still-
sort of spares. They can all be operated
I
independently,
gotcha.
so they can turn them on and off. And they do. Frankly, they turn them off too often, typically for maintenance and other reasons.
Yeah.
And when they turn a generator off,
Flare
that's just
gas.
gas we don't sell. And
Flare.
instead, J-Bear's buying power from typically ML&P. So one of our concerns is they could take more gas if they were operating more productively.
Sure.
And that's what we want them to do.
Good.
Is there anything keeping us from doing it ourselves?
Well, just the capital investment
Okay.
of buying, our own gen sets. We've talked about, burning our surplus gas for the benefit of the landfill
Landfill,
itself.
yeah.
On-site generation and
I
on-site
remember that
use.
discussion.
And if it looks like Doyon will not take as much gas as we want them to, that's the sort of thing we'll consider. At that point, it's gonna make sense for Mark to think about electric trucks and converting more of his infrastructure to electricity rather than diesel, because he'll have cheap electricity.
It might make sense to move forward with a little bit of planning in that regard to put pressure on Doyon if
A
nothing
little
else.
bit, and they know that we are, if they won't take the gas, we'll do something else with it. But our preference would be to sell the gas
Yeah.
as gas and not make our own electricity. We don't need to be in the power business
Or, yeah.
unless we really have stranded gas.
Yeah.
So the better model for us is the simpler model, which is sell the gas right out of the landfill.
Well, flaring it's like burning money. I mean, in some respect.
It is the least preferred alternative.
Yeah.
And so, and that's actually one of the options that we're gonna look at as part of the leachate disposal design project that you're gonna be seeing next Tuesday. Is one of the alternatives in the scope that we negotiated with the consultant is to look at basically having a landfill gas generator that'll take the excess that we're not selling to Doyon to use to, power the pumps that are gonna be part of the leachate pump station, the blowers that are part of the treatment system that we have for the leachate lagoons that we have there currently. And so we'd be able to hopefully have something in place in case some feasibility analysis and a study that's already evaluated, us having that type of facility to take that excess gas that's being produced and not used by Doyon. So that's in the works too.
Good.
So just high overview on the disposal utility finances. We of course have a care and closure liability fund. It's fully funded right now. It's currently in excess of $33 million that we have put aside for the ultimate, closure and post-closure care of the Anchorage Regional Landfill. Our dividend last year to the MOA was approximately $1.1 million. And things that are of interest, in addition to those, but typical capital purchases that you see from us every year are vehicles, that are for transfer trucks that are hauling garbage from the transfer station, leachate vehicles, heavy equipment that's operating at the landfill. We have really cool big compactors there, which are a lot of fun to watch and, kind of like my dream job.
Those expenses-
Besides this job, that's really what I would want to do.
Those expenses are come out of the fund?
Out of the, not out
Or
of the,
not?
not out of the.
Okay, that's just closure.
That's set aside for closure. We can't, we don't touch that.
Closure of a cell or closure of the landfill?
Closure of the landfill
Okay.
and like all of the monitoring and maintenance that that has to take place for the
Okay.
30 years following the closure of it.
Good.
Our budget cap's only 20.
Hey, that's true.
We contribute,
We could
what,
borrow
a couple
from that.
$1 million a year
It-
to the care and closure fund?
1.3 million.
Yeah.
So how much is in there total? Sorry?
It's in
33?
excess of 33 million.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And that's invested in a sort of a special, sort of a long-term portfolio, because we don't need the money until 2050 or so. So the EPA just requires us to set aside money so that when the landfill is not generating income, i.e. when it's closed, there's still enough money to take care of it during its long, long life. And one of the things that we'll begin to calculate is the landfill will generate gas long after it is closed. In fact, it may generate a lot of gas after it's closed. And the next time we sort of do the actuarial analysis of the closure fund, we will try to take into account the income stream from the gas, because that may frankly reduce our requirement for annual contributions dramatically if the landfill really does make money after it's closed. It won't be accepting new waste, but it will be selling gas.
The agreement with the Native Corporation in terms of the gas issue, did that change the parameters of the gas? Do we
No.
share the gas now, or was that in lieu of doing that?
The primary benefit to the solid waste services as a result of that, the resolution of the litigation, was that it became clear into perpetuity that the gas generated from
Thoughts?
the landfill belongs to the utility.
Yeah.
And relinquished all claims to that during the settlement process.
Okay.
So why not use it? I know we don't want to be in the general generation business, but why not use it for our fleet and our electrical and heating and other things? Why haven't we done that already?
Because right now it generates $1.8 million. That is
But
a
a
lot
quarter
of
of
money.
it ain't, well, I guess maybe the question is, when's the no-go that Doyon tells you that leads back to that decision, right? If they really say we're not expanding, then you seriously consider doing
Yes.
something.
Then we look at the gas generation curve, which is more positive than it was anticipated to be. And if Doyon says we're done, we don't need any more, then if it still looks like there's enough gas that can be relied on going forward, then we'll talk about capital investments on Mark's behalf to buy generation equipment so we can make electricity, and eventually start buying gear that runs on electricity rather than diesel.
I was kidding about stealing your care and closure liability fund, but you might reassess that from a continued liability to at least a break-even cost versus income.
Absolutely.
Is there a decision point, is there an end point to the discussion with Doyen on that? I mean, is there some, have we made it clear that we'd like a decision on that? And
Mark is currently in negotiations with Doyon now.
okay.
The contract's 3 or 4 years old now, and the contract was initiated based on modeling
Yeah.
of gas supply and gas availability, et cetera. So, Doyon wants to pay less for the gas. We want Doyon to buy more gas. There may be a way for us to get what we want, and for them to get what they want, and for the utility to make more money at the end of the day. So we conceivably could reduce the gas price some, increase their take or pay requirements, and increase Mark's revenue stream. And
Win-win-win.
Doyon would like what they're getting because their unit price for the gas would go down. That is at least a possibility, and we're willing to consider that. So
It
Mark
would be
is-
nice, it would be nice to use as a tactic perhaps that the assembly's getting antsy with that, or at least the committee is getting antsy on that regard.
To the, and Mike beats me up about that every 2 weeks. You know, we meet. So
Obviously, it's been effective.
It's, yes.
We've
And so-
already suggested that Mark can use me as the bad guy with Doyon, and that, you know.
Yeah, I use you all
If we
the
need
time.
more bad guys, I'll be sure to mention your name, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Okay, where were we? Oh, yeah, so the majority, that's pretty much what the majority of our capital projects consist of. And of course, a couple of the big ones coming up that you'll be seeing here in the near future for approval will be deferred maintenance projects, such as we have to replace the floor at the central transfer station, and we have to do a replacement of the roof at the central transfer station. So those are a couple high dollar capital projects that you'll be seeing here in the upcoming months.
Structurally or just covering on it? I
It's
mean,
just, it's the roof itself.
Just the roofing?
Yep. And then on to collections. Of course, we collect solid waste and recycling from about 20% of Anchorage. You know, we've got 6 or 7 different commercial routes that are operating every day. There's about the same amount of residential routes and recycling routes, solid waste and, garbage and recycling and collection that are operating, 5 days a week. And we collect from, again, 20% of the municipality.
I'm a customer, so.
And then, finances for refuse collections, we had a $570K dividend last year. We're looking at a $1.27 million dividend for 2018. Again, that's just proposed. And our typical capital purchases each year are, basically new garbage collection vehicles and recycling vehicles. Of course, all the curbside roll carts, and then dumpsters are kind of like the big purchases.
New bear carts.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And of course, we have a customer service division as well that interacts with the public, is collecting money at scale houses and cash booths at our facilities, and of course answering phone calls and taking payments over the phone. And of course, the admin, we have an admin division which consists of my office and people like Suzanne, our recycling coordinator, and a couple other. One of our biggest goals and one of the main topics that we're going to be looking at with the development of the integrated solid waste master plan, which is a project that was approved at the previous assembly meeting, is the question that we're going to try to answer with that is, what do we do, on January 1st, 2051, when ARL is closed? Because that's kind of what we would like to do, is push the date out of when ARL is going to close to as long into the future as possible. And the best way to do that is through diversion from the landfill, as well as, which includes recycling. So recycling is going to be a big priority of the master plan. What I hope to develop with that is basically a clear set of goals for what we want to do as a department as well as a municipality for recycling in the community, because we really don't have that right now. It's kind of like we've done a lot of cool pilots, like we've had the compost pilot that we've done the past couple of years that's been pretty successful. We tried a yard waste collection pilot this year as well, which was fairly successful. But we've just been trying to learn things and see what works for us. What we need next is basically a systematic approach to what we need to do as far as recycling for community, and give us some goals that we need to achieve to give us something to shoot for and drive our programs and projects and stuff like that.
I may be guilty of an infraction here, but I do put my yard waste in my trash, and so I mix it.
Which that's okay, that's what everyone.
I mean, so it's good, you put it in the landfill and
Yep.
that's fine and dandy. Is there any reason, how was the land face recycle project? How was that? Was that successful in terms of separating or having a pile for yard waste and that type of thing?
We're still getting the results back because we still have the pilot ongoing. I think we generated a lot of grass clippings at the beginning of the year and yard waste, yard debris that people had cleaned up. However, towards the end of the cycle, which is right now, we've seen a lot of people throwing branches
Yeah.
and stuff like that from cleaning up their yard from windstorms, whatever's happening,
Right.
and it's causing issues with the actual collection of that material. So it's getting like stuck in the hopper. That makes the driver have to get out and clear out the hopper to.
I could
make
see
sure
another
it's
little
like that.
can on the side there to take yard waste, but whatever. Mr. Dunbar?
So if I'm reading this right, Mark, it looks like all of our recycling efforts combined equal about 1 day's worth of trash that goes in the landfill?
At least for curbside recycling, yep. Well, I guess, yeah, that would be, if you include all those, yeah, correct. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not making the difference we need to make yet.
Right.
But there's a lot of self-delivery of particularly glass that's avoided. Is that caught in those numbers?
No.
I mean,
No.
the recycling center brings a lot in that would otherwise go to you guys.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder
Some of
what
that
that
would
is.
come through the Alaska Waste collection process, and then Alaska Waste has their own curbside recycling as well, although it's not as robust as ours. So
And that
that's not
loops
the
into
total
some-
community recycling.
Right.
Right.
That's just from what we generate.
Right.
And you're about 20% of Anchorage?
Yep.
Okay.
So there might be more,
But it's still a good point. I think it's just a little bigger than that. Yeah.
yeah. And there's also like, I don't know if it makes a big difference in like the amount of tonnage, but people go to Value Village or, those places. and they-
Resell,
Form of
reuse.
Yeah, another form of recycling.
And we've been trying to quantify that with all of the commercial entities that are doing recycling to try to get a kind of a value that you're referring to for us about like what the total diversion is from the community itself. But it's fairly difficult to do. It's not quite as easy as you would think it is because people don't want to necessarily give up that information about what they're recycling and what's coming into their facilities because they're running business, and it's very difficult because there's so many different entities that are involved with it. So it's kind of hard to get that. But it's easy to get our numbers, but harder to get the total communities.
Sure.
So.
You're the recycling person?
Yeah, as of last Monday.
Oh, okay. Congratulations. Can I ask?
Yes.
There may be a better point on recycling, but this seems like this slide. I work with you guys, and AWU to have them use ground glass as a bed for their project. And they passed, I think, a resolution saying we're gonna do that, not just spottily, but all the time. Is that progressing? Are they using more ground glass? or-
Sorry, Susanna.
I don't know.
Okay, so answer it, why don't you go? So we basically use the entire inventory of recycled glass that they had ground into pipe bedding material on the project that was adjacent to East High. And so they used the entire inventory that CRS, I haven't confirmed that, but that was the intent of having that whole stockpile that the private company had.
I mean, before it was sort of if the contractor was into it and if everything lined
Yeah.
up, they'd do it. I appreciated their push. I wanted, once that settled down, to do a similar thing with our water projects for non-AWU, the various things that we do outside of that, so have the meeting. So has it developed enough that we have enough of a history I can turn to by resolution or just by letter and say, you up to do you guys feel, or you wanna do another year of it to see how it works out in the construction season next year?
I mean-
There's a supply and demand thing, right? You don't want to have too much, but then they weren't using it all, so next year you're gonna ramp it up some.
Well, and the issue is too, this is not stuff that the muni collects. This This is a private entity that that collected for a while, stockpiled, and then I'm not sure they're even collecting anymore. But they might, we're not aware of it. We don't collect it, and we're not recommending that solid waste would collect glass in the near term. We don't really have a good storage location, and frankly, at least not as of yet, enough confidence in the market.
Well, I'm trying to work on both supply and
I know
demand,
you
right,
are.
so.
I get that. So, but I think this would be a good conversation to have with CRS or with, whoever the new Smurfit is. I can never remember. What do we call those guys now?
Do you know who?
Randy Virgin and those guys.
Oh, West Rock, sorry.
West Rock, sorry.
West Rock.
Yeah, sorry. To find out, who might be collecting or willing to get back in the glass business and under what condition, how much market do they need? And then do they just talk to bars? Do they, open it up for general drop off? I don't know what that dynamic looks like.
Do they ship that out of state, the glass, or
They
they
do
use
not.
it internally? I mean,
The only
here.
market.
Paper?
The people that take our
Cardboard?
Alpar that arranges for the export of the stuff does not want glass.
Yeah.
They don't have a market for it in Seattle, and they don't want it blended with our existing recycled stream.
Yeah.
They're pretty aggressive about that.
I separate mine,
Understandably.
but, I
You're
take
supposed
it
to.
out to the recycle center. throw
April
it-
used it as gripper, ice gripper. And it was, if you can get over the idea you're walking on glass, which it obviously is not dangerous in that way, it was really good, it was reflective, it had the gripping capability, it wasn't harmful in any way. And so, I mean, every bit we can do on that does do some of your landfill stuff, and it's also stuff that doesn't deteriorate very well
Right.
at all, right?
Ever,
So-
yeah.
Well, and that's part of the problem. It gets alongside the road there and you get a buildup of it, so on and so forth.
Well, I'd like to, because it's, the supply blames demand and demand blames supply, right? And so we never get off this thing. The contractors say, I wanna use it because I don't know that there's a ready supply, and I know where gravel is, and I know what gravel does.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd like to take the next step, to help push that on either the supply and demand or both. And I'd like for the meeting, Mr. Abbott, to try what AWU tried on their offices, which is using it on the front walks. They said afterwards, like, they got a couple of complaints of people like, don't do glass, but then the actual experience was better grip, reflectivity in low light conditions, and worked really well.
As long as it's rounded, no sharp edges.
Well,
I'll,
it's not.
I'll ask about that.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Bennett.
And the main point of the project we did last year was just to kind of demonstrate that we could get a material to the contractors that was affordable, because that was kind of the albatross, was that, oh, it's so much more expensive, and in reality it wasn't. And then the other piece was showing the utility that you can use this as pipe netting, and it's not going to cause, a construction issue. So you don't have to worry about the contractor complaining that it's too expensive, and then from like an engineering standpoint, that it's not gonna work correctly.
Sure, it's
So
gotta be
we-
economic.
and-
Well, the
and then we
study
use-
shows that it's better, right? I mean, it's very uniform, it packs down very tight and doesn't move on you, yet it, in a leak situation, is permeable, so it had a lot of even advantages over gravel, which is not always uniform, even this one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and you hear about a lot of communities using glass more aggressively than we do. One of our problems is the natural economics don't work. Here, gravel is cheap, and so is landfill space.
Mhm.
So the avoided cost of throwing away glass is not very high, and the alternative expense of gravel instead of processed glass as bedding material or as traction
Cheaper.
material is not big, there's not a very big delta. So
Admit it,
we're
that
willing to
curve
work
is
with you to
changing.
sort of try to bend the incentives a
Right.
little bit, but we will probably never get to the point where you'll have the advantage, the market advantages for glass that you have in other urban areas. But we're willing to work with you, and I'll check in on the sidewalk sand and or road sand possibility. But again, this is where the economics really work against us, for the road sand.
They've gotta work,
They're
so.
basically giving it to us. We pay for it to be hauled to us, the incremental actual cost of the material is really small. But
Where do we get our sand?
Do you want to proceed?
the road sand, AS&G, we bid it every year, every 2 years, something like that.
Where do they get it?
I don't know which pit it comes from, but again, Anchorage is, you know, there's gravel, there are still really good gravel pits in Anchorage. And then the valley is thick with them, right next to railroad lines. We've built a really good infrastructure for moving gravel into Anchorage, either digging it out of Anchorage or moving it into Anchorage. And the good news is, a lot of construction-related activity associated with that's really cheap. The bad news is, it's really cheap.
The discussion is good, but we need to finish a presentation if we're going to finish on time. Sorry.
Let's do it.
So another thing that I get beat up by Mike about is our safety performance. And so safety is always high on our list of things to talk about from a management perspective, as well as communicating that to everybody in the department. And so we've been spending a lot of time on reviewing our safety procedures, you know, making sure that folks are always doing their 360-degree walk rounds of their vehicles before and after they get in them. And we're just always looking for different ways to improve our safety performance. Because again, I didn't know this before until I started as the general manager here, but you know, actually solid waste is one of the most dangerous industries or professions in the United States.
Certainly doing it in the neighborhood with all the parked cars and everything is
Yes.
a difficult chore.
Right, yep. So it's a main goal of ours, it's part of our strategic plan. And you know, we're always looking for ways to improve our safety performance. And that takes us to the strategic plan. So I'm proud to say that over the last year, worked with staff, and we had a cross-section of management as well as line staff employees that helped us to put together a strategic plan for the utility. And so basically what the strategic plan tells us is what we do and how we're gonna do it. And so it looked at internal operations, it looked at external factors. We came up with a list of 10 key performance indicators that I'm gonna be asking supervisors about every week about how we're doing. And we're also working on trying to automate the reporting of those as much as possible, so that way we can make it easy to report on how well we're doing with each one of those different key performance indicators. But this is I was happy that we made it through the process, because it took a year, and sometimes I don't have that much patience. So it's been a good learning experience for me as far as patience is concerned, but it's been really good from a team building perspective within the department, with getting different groups from, you know, the collections drivers, the disposal operators, customer service, as well as management together into a room to talk about you know, what's important to the utility, and you know, what are some of the main things that we should be concentrating on.
Little bond.
Yeah.
Do you have a new landfill site identified?
Not yet.
You've got-
And we're not going to. Well, that's slightly incorrect. We would like to expand the landfill at its current location to the west. There is a piece of J-Bear land which has been considered for this, and which J-Bear has acknowledged is likely to be available. We have tried to secure actual control of that and have not been able to do so. But we remain confident that ultimately that will be where the landfill grows. And it's a piece of property almost the exact same size as the current landfill parcel, just to the west, sort of along the highway there, the current landfill. It's-
Okay, so it's not a find a new one, it's expandable.
Yes, and that would be another 50 years.
Okay, so
worth
that-
of. Anchorage is very well positioned by comparison to our peers in terms of having good local sanitary landfill resource available. We have 25 to 40 years of life in the existing facility, and we have a reasonable expectation of access to a sister site right next door, which would allow us to reuse the existing infrastructure. We wouldn't have to build new shops, new facilities to support it.
Actually, I think those are good good parameters, and the base is gonna be pretty touchy about trying to give up some of that urban portion of the base. I mean, they've got land out in the outskirts, but that urban portion is, I mean, the port would like to have some land, I suspect too, and so on and so forth, but they're pretty protective of that. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so bear cards. I've been involved in a lot of discussions with those lately. But just as a refresher, with the $2 increase for bear cards goes into effect starting January 1st of this year. We've got basically 150 carts, 177 carts that are in inventory right now. We've got 95 of them deployed around our service area so far. Depending on an upcoming assembly action and about whether or not to extend the pilot program to a couple or three different but additional communities within our service area, that'll determine whether or not we need to order, an additional number of bear cars to make sure that we meet the anticipated demand for that area. But yeah, I mean, this is the topic that I've talked about the most, has been bear carts,
Yeah.
For obvious
Mr. Dunbar.
public reasons, yeah.
So you and I have been discussing this, Mark, and you said that you have an email from me in my inbox I haven't had a chance to look at yet. But you and me and Mike have been talking about the fact that, in my district and other districts, it's not SWS that is the issue, right? But the area in my district is actually abut the forest and have the sort of highest human-bear interaction are not in SWS's territory. And so I would like us to continue thinking about ways that we can either work with Alaska Waste and or coerce Alaska Waste into making these more available. So one thought I had is, and this is probably a dumb question, but where does Alaska Waste send their waste to our landfill?
Yes.
Okay, so if we were to say like, everyone who uses our landfill must provide their bear-proof cans at, would that be in violation of some, could we do that if we wanted to?
I'm not sure. I mean,
Okay.
I guess you could.
Change your contract.
Well, it wouldn't even be a contract, right, because we would be,
Just double the price.
well, that's not the issue, I mean, so in our case, we're not forcing anyone to take bear cards.
Nope.
We're just giving them the option.
Right.
And the question is whether Alaska Waste provides that service to the same degree. And.
They just have a different stance on it because they have a much larger area that they service, which means more of that bear-human interaction. They've had bear cards for I'm guessing for the last 8 years.
Mhm.
They've had them a while, certainly longer than we have. We've only had them since 2015.
Okay.
So they have their own internal culture and policies for how they distribute the cards and how customers can request them. And, we don't really have any say and or control over that.
Do you ever talk to them about it?
I meet with my counterpart over there probably once every 2 weeks.
Does this ever come up?
It comes up all the time.
Okay.
I live right, Eric and I live right up to Chester Creek, and I've only had one bear in the neighborhood in the last 30 years that I've known them.
What we do, and we have a good working relationship with Alaska Waste, and because obviously they're our biggest customer. Their take on it is that residents, people need to be educated to handle their waste properly. And so the bear-resistant cart is just kind of one piece to handling trash appropriately so that you're not attracting bears.
Yeah.
That's certainly true, but it's also blame shifting. And if we were to take the lead on the education portion, for example, and our education, I'm not sure how you guys are gonna target that. Is it only gonna be to our customers, or you can use things like radio announcements or other things that might touch everyone in the community? And if that's the case, and we're taking the lead on that, then maybe they can stand up and do their portion and make it easier and faster for someone that wants a bear-proof can to request to get one. So,
We have 15 minutes.
yeah, sorry, let's move
And-
on. But if
and-
you communicate that to them, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think they understand, and I think they're trying to adjust. I just don't think that it's just not happening fast enough for people. vehicle. And they had a much higher demand, and people wanted Bear carts this year,
Yep.
much more so than they did in previous years, and they just didn't have the inventory to provide that service to the whole area like people were requesting it. So what they had to do, from my understanding, is they had to concentrate or prioritize the number of cans that they had available to areas that they had agreed with Alaska Department of Fish and Game that were, high
High
demand
impact
or
areas.
high bear human interaction areas.
Sure.
And so, how that worked out, it doesn't sound like it went too good, but,
Okay. Well, again, I mean, if there's anything we can do to help them, I would appreciate if we did it. And, just like I said, keep having a conversation. And if it comes down to it, it looks like they're dragging their feet, then, consider ordinances or other things to force it. Because it's, most people in Anchorage don't really think about the fact that there are two, they just think about the trash goes out the door. They don't really think about who's taking, same with you guys in LNP. People don't really, they think there's electricity, there's power, there's garbage. And then they're not really interested in whose jurisdiction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And just another point I want to throw out there about that is that their system, a lot of their carts aren't automatic.
Unlock.
They're not compatible with basically automated side loaders, at least for a gravity disposal. So basically what has to happen is the
Get out
driver
and
has to
open it.
exit the vehicle,
Right.
go and unlock something, put the lid out, and then pick up the can that way.
Talk about injuries.
And so you talk about injuries, and again,
Yeah.
solid waste is one of the most dangerous industries that there is in the United States, and keeping the driver in the the vehicle is the most important thing you can do.
Is that because they have the wrong kind of trucks or the wrong kind of cans?
It's a different kind of can than we do. So our can is an automatic can or compatible with automated side loaders. However, the resident has to actually unlock the
Yeah.
container, and then you can push it out to the curb, and then when the automated side loader comes by to pick it up, it'll empty by gravity.
But they have automated side loaders. They just bought, in case the bear proof, they bought a different kind of can.
They just have different cans.
Can they not do that anymore?
My understanding is that they have transitioned their bear carts to the type that we have.
Okay.
However, they still have an inventory of, a couple thousand or, whatever. They have a large
Old
number
ones?
of the old ones that
Can we
are still out.
recycle those?
I know.
Using planters or something?
But for the record, Mr. Consul has joined us. Go ahead.
Okay. So wrapping up, a couple things about cleanup day and free dump or landfill days. We had over 5,000 customers, saved $89,000 in disposal fees for residents for those two Saturdays that we were there.
That's a lot of money.
Or open for that. And then major initiatives for 2018, one is again gonna be the development of the integrated solid waste master plan, which will give us that framework for what we're gonna do as far as recycling is concerned, as well as what are the major capital development projects that we're gonna be looking at over the next 5 to 50 years. The leachate pipeline, which is gonna be in front of you on Tuesday, is another big initiative, because kind of one of the most important things that we can do is get the leachate tankers off the road.
That's great. How much is that pipeline gonna cost?
We're not sure yet.
Ballpark?
Ballpark, with design.
Depends on where it
Looking at
goes.
like $5 million for the best alternative.
Uh-huh.
But it goes up from there for the others.
Sure, and what will happen to the trucks after if we build that?
Well, we'll wanna keep at least a couple, just in case, there's an issue with the pipeline and we get in an emergency situation and we have to haul stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm just- I
The
mean-
truck pieces will be fine. We'll
Yeah.
repurpose the haul,
What's on that?
the tractor, portion of it. And hopefully we won't have to buy very many tankers, tanker trailers.
The
going forward.
tankers drive through my district, so I'm pro pipeline.
Nobody wants the accident on the side of the road where a truckload of leachate spills out over the side of the Glen Highway.
And you're taking a risk every time you drive out the gate.
Yes, we do. So, we're still gonna be in this business for another couple of years until we get a pipeline. The big challenge is we're gonna have to be negotiating likely with J-Bear and or going on utilities to receive this stuff. For the pipeline to travel across and then to receive the material.
And then it drops into AWU.
It ultimately goes to
Yep.
the AWU treatment plant, but depending on where we access the sewer system, the pipes might be owned by Doyon Utilities. And they are nervous about that. This is not a waste stream that they anticipated when they bought those pipes or when they acquired the pipes. So they are not unreasonably concerned that they want to make sure that whatever we would be putting into the pipes doesn't ruin them or require additional maintenance that they're not planning for.
Is there
Oh.
any, I'm sorry.
I hope we tend to our relationships with Doyon and make sure that we're building bridges rather than putting
Absolutely.
up barriers.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, is there any way to use leachate for profit? Is it just clear, like a totally useless waste product? Is there any way we learn how to burn methane? Can we use leachate to kill mosquitoes? I don't know, is there any?
It's already been
One thing that
processed.
we can do with leachate is recycle it back into the landfill.
Yeah.
We've
Right.
tried that in the past. I don't think it went too well as far as the pilot that we did 10 years ago.
Can you?
But it is something that we can beneficially do with the leachate, to help stimulate gas production and settlement within the landfill. So you can basically accelerate the biodegradation process to produce more gas and accelerate the decomposition of waste. And so that gives you a greater in-place density faster.
Dust control, however, you're putting organics out there, that's.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to
gonna
spray
make
this
gas.
around their neighborhood.
Yeah.
No.
This stuff is, stinky.
Can we
at a
sell it to
certain
the
level.
military as a biological weapon?
So, yeah.
They have real reservations about it being piped through their system. However, it's done in countless other municipalities and with solid waste handling. It's a normal thing. It's just that's brand new to them. But that would be, back to your question, that's one kind of beneficial use. However, it's got hurdles and operational stuff that happens that we have to address too.
You got
But
5 minutes.
there are benefits to managing the moisture content of the waste mass.
Yeah.
And leachate would be the tool that you would use if you decided you needed more moisture in the landfill. We're not currently doing that right now.
Yeah, I mean, we need the pipeline and lift stations so that.
You could
we can better
recycle
manage our
it,
leachate.
re-inject it kind of
And
thing.
we're almost certainly not gonna use all of it, even if we do end up sprinkling it back on top of the landfill.
Right.
You always have some that you have to dispose of.
Yep.
And the pipe's the right answer.
Mr. Trainee is out there waiting for his, the next meeting, anyway.
Thank you, sorry I was late, I had a grandkid need to go to the dentist.
Oh,
Forrest, are you advocating chemical warfare or what?
No.
I just thought I'd check.
Facilitating chemical warfare, implementing.
anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, but just to answer your question, I'm doing everything that I can to have a harmonious relationship with all of our customers, with Doyon, understanding the fact that we need to work with them to
Sure.
increase our, how much gas they're buying from us, as well as working with them on this pipeline project. And that's just in general across the board with all departments, that's our mentality, is trying to build bridges and not destroy them and, get stuck in our silo and cross our arms like this, so. But that's it. That's all I got.
Well,
Our philosophy is do something. We realize that in order to get these projects going, which is the landfill, better utilization of landfill gas, leachate pipeline, we just have to do something. We gotta keep stuff moving. Can't sit around on our laurels and plan stuff out and hope that, somebody gets around to thinking it's a good idea to dispose of leachate the way we need it to. We're working with them continually to help address their concerns, trying out new initiatives, trying out things to see if they work, just et cetera, across the board with everything that we're doing.
Mr. Dunmore.
Yeah, I have another really small point while I've got you here, Mark, and this is nowhere near as impactful as the leachate pipeline. So I went to the transfer station and I'm moving, I gave them a bunch of chemicals, and to recycle there. And then the way it's set up, it was a Saturday and there was a long line, back out. And it turned me back, it put me, instead of letting me drive back out, it forced me into the long
Yep.
line of people and then
To
had
get
to
out?
drive all the way through your facility.
Hmm.
Why don't you let people that are dropping their chemicals just drive back out?
That's what one of the other main deliverables from the master plan is gonna be evaluating what the central transfer station site looks like.
Traffic flow.
Evaluating new means for traffic flow, because I agree with you 110% that it is not.
It's crazy, it's a
not
really
friendly.
weird, like, turning thing going on over there, so.
Final comments?
Good, and what's the, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just a follow-up, what's the, like, timeframe maybe getting that resolved?
We're starting the master plan, and we're gonna have the kickoff meeting in a couple of weeks. We hope to have it developed by this time next year, or have it completed. And so after that, we would look at what those changes are gonna be. And it might even be something that we can implement right after we've sat down and like traced everything out and said, okay, this is a better route for traffic flow. But in a couple of years would be my guess at the earliest.
Mr. Constant?
Yeah, hey, so there's a new development in the city that the feds have taken over gas line management, and so grading in alleys in the downtown is becoming a problem, and a potential $200,000 fine if something bad goes wrong, because the state gave up their responsibility to the feds, and we're now on the hook, and my alley's not getting graded. But the concern that was brought to me by 2 community councils was that when the alley side trash service was approved, it was contingent upon accessibility in the alleys. And so there's a new problem coming, because the neighbors are still gonna fight for their alley service if it becomes mountains of the moon in our alleys, because there's not any grading going on. And so it's a concern they brought up solid waste. So I don't know if you remember that group that was organized, the Save Our Alleys Task Force, but they're organizing again. You'll probably hear from them.
Okay.
At this point, we're not planning to change alley service.
Yeah, they're thinking ahead, because if it gets bad, then
And I'm optimistic that we're gonna find a way to deal with the
Good.
alley maintenance.
We have
issue.
concerns about grading, but there's also concerns about paving. People don't want paving, or a lot of people don't
I've
want
heard
paving.
one person.
Well, that may be the
say
one I heard as well.
Quite loudly, but one person currently has told that I.
Don't want anybody speeding through
Said
there.
that he's worried about his alley turning into an arterial.
yeah, we
Maybe
want
that's
it.
a valid concern, but for the most part, people tend to love it.
Yeah.
Although with the new diverter at 10th and Denali, our alley's picked up the pace now, so 9th to 10th. But paving would be a solution, but it's a very expensive solution that's gonna be rolled
Yeah,
out.
it's gonna
over
take a long time to get to,
a long time.
we do a few blocks a year.
Yeah, so
What
that,
happens to the drainage when we pave an alley?
We accommodate for it.
good engineering.
We pave the alley in such a way that it drains to a useful, into, typically back to the street.
Most alleys, most neighborhoods with alleys have, they use it for rear yard access. They use it for parking, they use it, garages and stuff face the alley.
And we're typically, the alleys we're paving first are the ones where there is a useful drainage system that you can complement.
The alley that brought this concern up to my attention has a standing water that's
Swale.
about 9 or 8 inches deep, and it's been there for about 5 years. They were jokingly told by whoever came by to grade that it's now going to be a concern of the EPA, because it's now one of those water bodies. Yeah, and so luckily no ducks have landed in it yet. So
Mr. Croft,
yeah.
any final comment?
No, sir.
Mr. Trainee?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate very much. Very informative. So thank you. We're done. Amy, final comment? All right, we're done.